Okay, this is Taz Street with Positive Out Loud, and today is a very special day. I have Meadow Linn on with us today. Hey Meadow! She is an author, she is a speaker, she is a mystic chef, and she's a photographer. So she's all that is creative, and that's exactly why I wanted to get her on this show, because on Positive Out Loud, we want to connect and inspire you to live a positive life. So Meadow, thank you for coming on.
Oh, my joy. I'm delighted to be here.
So I think the first question I want to ask is, because of all these things that you do, what brought you to that place where you're just like bursting with creativity, and what is your greatest influence with all of that?
Gosh, well, on these hot summer days, I don't feel like I'm bursting with creativity. I feel more like molasses being pushed through a sieve. But I think I have always been drawn towards artistic endeavors of different sorts, whether it is, as you said, cooking or eating, which you can do that in a creative way as well, or sorry, my dog was making noise. I was taking off her collar.
Hi, Molly.
So I think even as a child, my earliest childhood memories are dragging the kitchen chair or the dining room chair into the kitchen to crawl into the cupboards to pull out different things that I could find to create some sort of concoction. So in some ways, I actually think I was born with it. I think, a lot of what we are in our lives is learned, and a lot of it you just come out that way. So and I was a school teacher for 8 years, and then I substitute taught for 2 years after that. And as a little kid, that's what I used to do. I would sit all my friends down and I would teach them, whether it was the recorder or something I made up, or, I always had something that I was making others learn. So I do think, some of it was just innate within me.
And who do you think is your greatest influence?
I think it's a combination of so many, and maybe it also, because I'm a Libra, it's all about balance. It's hard for me to choose just any one thing. My mom's an Aries, so she's always like, this one thing. And I'm like, well, it could be this, and it could be that. And so I believe there's probably a lot of big influences. My parents definitely were some of my biggest influences, and allowing me that space to be creative and to follow my passions. That in 2009, at the height of the economic downturn, when I decided to quit my job, as I mentioned, I was a school teacher, and teachers aren't known for making big salaries, but I had a good salary at a great school, really good benefits. It was comfortable. And so a lot of families would say, especially in 2009,
oh yeah,
stay where you are, don't quit, especially when you have no plan.
Right.
But I also knew that it was the time to take the leap. And I thought, if I didn't take the leap then, when would I? And I didn't have any dependents, and it felt like the time for me personally in my journey to take that leap, and my family supported me in that. And it wasn't always easy. I would say outwardly to others, they say, oh, how can you do that at the financial situation and this and that? And I'm so excited. But underneath that excitement was terror. But throughout the tears, that my family was there supporting me. And I really think that has been a big influence too, that support of going for your dreams no matter what. And my mom has really been there for whatever it is that I've said I wanted to do, and said, go for it. Because, we do just have this one life. Well, maybe we have other lives, but as this incarnation, we just have this
here,
life.
Right.
And so that has been a big influence.
So what pushed you to take that risk and to get in that uncomfortable zone and just take a leap into the unknown? What was it that you think pushed you over the edge?
I think it was a combination of things. I love teaching, and I was actually pretty good at it. And so it wasn't like I was being pushed away from something. It was more that I was being drawn towards something else. And it was really that at the time, I loved cooking. And as a very young child, I said my earliest childhood memories are creating meals, creating concoctions. My parents said that even, I could barely speak, and it was the 70s. They wanted to like eat on the floor by the fire, and I would insist that we sat at the table with the table set. So like, I was 1 or 2 years old, like barely verbal, and I still was very particular about honoring a meal in a certain way. So it was something that was always part of me. And at that time, 2009, I was living in Los Angeles, and I had a pretty long commute. So I had about 45 minutes each way every day in the car. And I realized that I spent most of my commute time planning what I would make for dinner. And I spent my summers going to the farmer's market. One day, it was late morning. I'm kind of hungry. What will I have for lunch? And mind you, it was summer vacation. So you have a little more free time as a teacher in the summer. I thought, I'm going to make pizza. So I decided to make pizza from scratch.
Wow.
And cheese, too. And I used zucchini that had been from my dad had given me from his garden. But like, how often do you think like, I want pizza. Not only am I going to make the dough from scratch, but I'm also going to make the cheese from scratch. So I didn't actually eat my pizza at lunchtime. By the time it was a bit later. But so I realized that was such an important part of who I was. And I'd been cooking for retreats and helping the family business since the summer after I graduated high school. So it was something that was familiar, but my kind of day job was teaching. And so I think that was the kind of that moment that clicked for me, realizing that, I didn't subscribe to education magazines. I didn't spend my commute, sometimes I did, planning my lessons. I was reading Bon Appetit and Gourmet before it went out of business, or and I was spending a lot of my commute time thinking and planning out my meals. So I realized at that time, like, I have to try following this passion and if I could make that into a career rather than continuing on a very comfortable path that it was comfortable. It wasn't always easy, but it was something that I could do. I was paid, okay. I was getting money as a salary, whereas what I was leaping into was totally unknown.
Right.
So I think that was really what pulled me. It was kind of that what if, what if I don't take this leap? And that was scarier to me than the fear of not taking the leap.
Right. So that's a great question to ask yourself for everybody that's listening out there. What if I don't take this leap? How would that affect my entire future? And
that's a really big question, and that's what it can be scarier not to jump than it can be to take a really scary jump, because you see your life good, comfortable, but that wondering always, what if I had taken that leap? What if I had followed my passion? What if I had tried that scary thing? When I was in college, I'd heard from a friend that she was trying to do something each day or each week that scared her. And not dangerous, but, something that pushed you out of your comfort zone. So I thought, that's kind of cool. I'm going to try that. And I thought about donating blood. And I realized, no, that was still a little too far out of my comfort zone.
I used to be on the other side of that. I used to take the blood from people.
I bet you are very good phlebotomist.
We have our little smelling salts, just in case, yeah.
So I auditioned for a play.
Oh, cool.
And, I'd done plays in elementary school, and even in high school, I'd done some plays with with the Missoula Children's Theater. So it wasn't totally out of my realm of experience, but suddenly I was in college and auditioning for a play. That was kind of scary. And so I did. And what was interesting, actually, the day that they post the cast list, the two student directors sat in the student cafe and watched to see everybody come check the cast list. They said I was the only person who auditioned who didn't check the cast list that night. Because, I was doing it more just to push myself out of that comfort zone. And I actually got a part. And it was an experience I wouldn't have had otherwise. And I created this new group of friends and a sense of community. Mm-hmm. And it was a really great lesson for me in doing those scary things, those things that make your heart race a little bit, because the alternative is even scarier sometimes. The ability to stay exactly where you are and not expand and not have those opportunities and not grow and change. And so I think it was similar with quitting my job in 2009 as well.
Yeah, that's where I've been this past year and forward. It's like, I just want to try all these new things that are going to help me grow and where I'm going to get out of that comfort zone, because it can get really boring and really stale really fast. So I started jumping in the cold water. I started doing the Wim Hof breathing and started this podcast, and have been jumping out of boats and going snorkeling. And, that was pretty scary. I know that sounds kind of funny, but for me, just to jump out of the boat. Yeah.
I have teeth marks in my snorkel mask. It's a barracuda! It's a barracuda!
We saw a lot of those. I understand. So, and I think what you brought up there is so important, because if we don't get out of our comfort zone, if we stay comfortable thinking that this is the only way, this is the secure way, that's just nothing is really secure when we look at it all, right?
And then the caveat is making sure that those things that are scary I just want to add this little note, are safe and healthy and good they're within reason. These are things that make my personal pulse race where it wouldn't do it for somebody else. I'm not advocating somebody necessarily if it's way out of your realm, skydiving or doing something that is not of physical or emotional, that is physically or emotionally safe for you. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Right. And so tell me a little bit about how your life has changed from 2009 till now. Tell me about some of the things that are really exciting.
Wow, well, so many things, because I actually quit with the intention of starting a business to do kind of like food tours. My parents lived in wine country, so I moved near where they lived. And that helped too, because I had a built-in safety net and community too. It would have been much scarier and much harder had I not had somewhere to go.
Right.
And it was wine country, so it was perfect. And I was really into foods, and that's what I wanted to follow, my passion for food. So I thought I would do these artisanal food tours where we'd visit farms, maybe do some weeding or learn about different farming practices. And it was a great idea, actually, but it never happened. And I've noticed in my life that when there's a point where you need to keep pushing to make something happen. And there's another point when things aren't falling into place that I realize it's not meant to be. And that it just never got off the ground. I never even really tried, because it just never really felt in the flow. So what I realized was that I needed that in order to take that leap, in order to quit my job. I needed some sort of plan. And then when it wasn't in the flow, things just began to unfold. I never really had a plan. One thing led to another, but I think in many ways, that was what brought me to where I am now. I could have never planned what I am doing now. And at one point, I actually wrote a blog post where I don't know if it was a title or one of the first lines, where I talked about, the expression, when God closes a window, he opens a door. Or when he closes a door, he opens a window. Mm-hmm. But I said in this blog that sometimes it seems like he blows the roof right off, that you end up somewhere where you never expected, because within the confines of where you currently are, you can't even imagine, you can't even fathom that would be your future. So when I left teaching, I never planned to write a cookbook. And that would, I mean, that's way more than an open window. That's the roof being blown right off. That was possible. However, at that point, I wasn't in a position to leave my job to write a cookbook. But one thing led to another. So I had some time. It was summer after I left my job. I thought, well, I'll start a blog. At that time, there weren't as many as there are now. And it was more something for me to do. I've never monetized my blog. I've never done much with it other than write it because it was simply something for me to do. But through that, many opportunities came. Because I was doing the blog, somebody approached me and said, hey, would you mind if I linked my site to your blog? I said, sure. Well, his site was the Seattle Chinese Times, which has a distribution of 500,000. And
oh, wow.
A printed newspaper. So, one thing kind of led to another, always saying yes to different opportunities when they came forward. And, being willing to work for free for a lot of time and a lot of things to get that experience. Over the 6 years when I was really dedicated to writing my blog every 2 weeks, I became a much better writer. And I'm not typically a very vulnerable person. I like to show a certain facade to the world. But through writing the blog, I became more vulnerable, and I shared thoughts and feelings and events in my life that I wouldn't have shown normally or shared. And that was really powerful too, to see that experience of opening up and how receptive others can be, and that it didn't have to be so scary to actually share myself with others. And so, and then through that, my mom and I teamed up and wrote the Mystic Cookbook together, which you, I think, alluded to in your introduction. But because I'd been writing the blog, because I was published by the Seattle Chinese Times, when my mom, who'd already written a number of books, approached the publisher about us co-writing together, I had some background to back up being able to write a book and share recipes, because in my blog there were a lot of recipes. So, and then once the book was written, then things unfolded from there. And now I'm teaching a lot of creativity workshops, and I do life coaching and health coaching. But recently I've also started doing a lot of writing coaching, which is really fun. I love working with people to help craft whatever project it is, whether they're writing a personal development article or writing a memoir, and really digging deep and looking at those personal parts of writing, because it's all, even though I do like life coaching, health coaching, writing coach, it's all intertwined. If I'm working with a client on writing, we will end up looking at aspects of our health and nutrition and well-being and other life issues. And but then the teacher in me loves doing the very the grammar part and the and assigning homework. But that's been really exciting, and that's something I've just been delving into more recently.
So you talked about being more vulnerable in your blog with the writing. Did you feel like once you started being more vulnerable there, that kind of just leak into your regular life?
It did. And I think for me, being able to write it was more, it felt safer than just going out and announcing to the world, this is what I think. But the more that I announced it in writing, which felt safer, you're right, I did become more comfortable sharing it in videos or, Facebook Lives, or when I'm giving a keynote talk or a workshop, and being able to share that. And I actually think it's helped isn't the right word, but I think I've deepened as a person, and my relationships with others have deepened, being willing to share multiple layers and levels of myself. And I also think it's informed my work as well, and made me more empathetic and more so where people, I can connect better with people in my workshops or with coaching clients when I'm able to show my own challenges and struggles and things that I'm working through as well. I think being authentic is really important. And I think we all resonate with people who are authentic and are really living their truest self.
Yeah, because no matter where you are in your journey of becoming more and more into the spiritual realm, everybody has issues, they have challenges, and I've noticed for myself when I'm looking at people online or watching videos that if people start talking about their challenges, I can really connect with them on a deeper level. But if they're just talking about how wonderful life is and they're so happy, and yeah, there's that as well. But connecting people on that level of being vulnerable is so, I don't know. I don't think there's anything better than being authentic. You're right. What challenges do you have right now that you're working through that you have?
Ooh, that's a big question. Gosh.
Or let's just focus on the one that keeps popping up.
I think for me right now, and maybe it's because it's summertime, and also part of it is this is total excuse, which talking about challenges, I probably shouldn't start with an excuse. But having gone to school for many years, regular school, then college, getting a bachelor's degree, then graduate school, master's degree, then being a teacher, the school schedule is very ingrained in me. So it is summertime now. So I am struggling with motivation. I have lots that I need to be doing, but lots of things that don't have deadlines. And I have been informed by my family that I am a procrastinator, which I never admitted before. And so I would say one of the things professionally that I am working on right now is motivation. That I'm great at motivating others and have lots of tips and strategies, but for myself, really, finding that when, feeling pulled to want to go do summer things, and which is important to live that free, expansive feeling of summer, but also there are times when you actually need to buckle down and just get the work done.
Exactly. It is really hard in the summertime. I find myself, I know I want to come home, I better mow the lawn or clean up the house or whatever, but let's just go to the beach. Yeah. But eventually it has to get done. You're right. So what are some of the things that you're working on now that you want to share with everybody?
I've got a number of projects in the work, and that's in the works. And one of the challenges, I said, I don't have exact due dates on them. So that is something for somebody who is a bit of a procrastinator is, what I need to do is actually sit down and make myself a schedule. But what I am working on that I should be working on more, I have a soup cookbook that I've actually been working on for a while now. It got stalled. I needed to find a new publisher. Now I do have a new publisher, so it has to be unstalled. But now it's very hot. That's really exciting. I've created most of the recipes already, and I've also gotten some wonderful contributions from other authors. Anita Moorjani and Colette Baron-Reed and a number of others have donated some of their favorite recipes as well to the book. And that's about savoring, soups to savor, easy, I think the subtitle, ridiculously easy soups with full flavor. So meals that you can make on a weeknight or on a weekend for your family that are healthy, delicious, a lot of flavor, and they don't take a lot of effort. So that's something I'm working on putting together. I've written the recipes, I said, and I photographed many of them, but now's the time to actually sit down at the computer and put all of that together. I'm also working on an affirmation deck, Savor Your Life deck of affirmations, and a friend is doing the artwork. And I have another project I'm working on as well, which is an oracle deck. I think the title is Guardians of the Sacred Grove, and my publisher has found an amazing artist who does lots of fairy and mermaid and wee folk type art, and so that's going to be a really wonderful oracle deck as well.
That sounds really exciting. All three of those things. I want to get them all.
Yeah. I found a wonderful publisher, and so it's really exciting to be collaborating on these new ventures.
So with those decks, are you creating the affirmations for the decks, or how does that work?
Or the one is an affirmation deck, so they're just little cards with artwork on one side, and I'll be writing the affirmation for the other. And then the Guardians of the Sacred Grove is a larger deck, like, 44, 50, I can't remember, they come in different sizes. And those ones will have artwork and a message on the card, but then a booklet too, where you can learn more about that message and do different card readings.
So where do you get the inspiration for the affirmations?
I have a whole pile behind me on this daybed here of other people's affirmations to get inspiration from work that others have done. My mom's written a number of oracle decks and has written a number of affirmations, so I've been getting inspiration from her as well. So, and because it's about savoring, that's something that's very dear to my heart. Earlier I mentioned my blog, which is called Savor the Day. Savoring, I think I'm considered a pretty joyful person, and I attribute a lot of that to savoring. Whether you want to call it gratitude or cherishing, or there's a word that starts with M, mindfulness. It's all very similar. Mm-hmm. But for me, the word that I use, and probably it's because of my connection to food, is savoring. And in the Mystic Cookbook, the book that my mom and I co-wrote together, we have a line, when you savor your food, you savor your life. And I've noticed in my own life that when I savor the little moments, whether it's noticing, how an amazing little flower pushed up through the sidewalk, despite all odds against it. You could look at it like, damn weed, but I do sometimes too, when you look at your lawn that's full of dandelions. But also you could look at it, and it takes no time out of our busy lives to notice, wow, look at that flower. Look at it, how resilient it is. Look at, its beautiful yellow color, or, whatever kind of flower it is, that beautiful magenta color. And really taking moments out of my day to savor. And so savoring is something that's dear to my heart, as I said. So I think, the affirmations will come from that experience too, for me, of finding those momentary joys. You can savor brushing your teeth, like, wow, I have teeth to brush, not everybody has teeth. And, where it could be like,
exactly.
That was the sound of the electric toothbrush. I feel that sometimes too. But
speaking of brushing your teeth, how do you start your day to get yourself grounded for the rest of the day? So how does that? I like to ask a lot of people on the podcast that question, because I think that's really important. How you start your day is going to influence the rest of your day.
And I wish I could say I had a really powerful, beautiful morning routine that all could draw upon. And I know I had an ex-boyfriend who loved reading Tim Ferriss and other writers like Tim Ferriss who say, this is what you do, and this is how you are successful, and you have to do these 5 things before you get out of bed each morning. And I was actually proud of myself, because I tend to just go along with things. And when this boyfriend was telling me I had to do these 5 things before my feet hit the ground if I wanted to be successful, really, I would be like, oh, okay. And instead, I said, no, I'm not going to do it. Because I knew in my heart that I was going to be happy and joyful, great way of defining success, without doing these things he was telling me I needed to do. So to be honest, I don't have a really specific morning routine or anything particularly magical or spiritual. I usually, and I know it's what people say not to do, but I usually first thing in the morning, I get my phone, which I don't keep in my room, and I get back in bed and I read my emails and I catch up on Facebook and Instagram. And then when I get out of bed, I have a big glass of water, which I do recommend for everybody. Drink water first thing in the morning.
I do that too. Awesome.
Great way to stay hydrated, great way to stay alkaline. And then you've already taken in a whole bunch of your water for the day. So I do recommend that. Sometimes I'll put apple cider vinegar in it as well. And, and then I get up, have breakfast. Sometimes I go straight to my computer, then I have breakfast. So it's nothing too divine, but it works for me. I'm not particularly a morning person. So.
I understand. My other half, Rachel, is not either. So, I'm the morning person. I like to get up and I like to think about what I'm grateful for in the morning before I get, that kind of thing. And when we are on vacation, I kind of drifted off from all of that. And now I'm trying to get myself back into things. But I find for me, if I do that, it just makes my day a whole lot better. But, some people don't want to do that, and their life is just wonderful anyway. So it really doesn't matter.
And that's the thing. There's for a year, for a long time. Oh, I want to be the kind of person who gets up and takes the dog for a walk or goes for a run or, meditates. And then there came a point when I realized I'm 40. I'm not doing that. And there's some things in your life you can want to do, but you actually don't want to do them enough to do them. And that was one of those things. And now I have given in isn't the right word, but I've accepted that may not be my journey, but I have other ways to bring that balance and equanimity and joy and savoring into my day, even if it is not part of my morning practice.
Of course, I'm going to ask, what are some of those ways? So.
As I was mentioning before, for me, really, it's finding those little things to savor, whether it's the crunch of a cucumber in my salad, or even when it's really hot out, noticing, wow, look at the way my skin feels with the sun pounding down on it, or, the seeming, some people will say I'll be anthropomorphizing, but like, the smile on my dog's face when we go out for a walk, or, though really for me, that is my spiritual practice. And, and as I mentioned before, it can be considered gratitude. And my mom, she's had a really rough childhood. I mean, it would take up the whole rest of our time to go into all the details of all the challenges she encountered. And many people in her who would have had her circumstances wouldn't have survived and wouldn't have been able to flourish and continue had they survived and be as successful as she is. And when she looks back on, what was the one thing that helped her, what was different? And for her, she has this gratitude. And so I do think it's similar with the savoring. It's kind of gratitude light, if you will, because it's these little tiny moments, but it's all the same. It's just giving it a different word. And finding gratitude for, as I said, gratitude when you're brushing your teeth. Grateful to have teeth if you have teeth to brush. Or, grateful for your eyes. Someone else would kill to have eyes, even if they're itch, even if whatever is going on with you, that and recently I saw a doctor and I said, "Did you see my lab work?" Or, whatever it was. And I can't remember what I said, or something like, "I'm jealous of people who don't," whatever it was I said to him. And he said, there are people who would be jealous of you. And it was powerful to hear that, especially from a doctor. He was a specialist, to realize that there are so many things in our life that we can savor and be grateful for. And so for me, I don't particularly sit down and have a practice where I write it in a journal. But there are, for those who are interested, there are great journals. There's one called like the 5-minute journal, where you list like 3 things in the morning you want to do during the day, and the evening you write like the things that you were grateful for. So it's very simple, and that's just one of many. But for me, I found it's more ongoing. So I don't sit down precisely and have a time where I'm going to be grateful or I'm going to record the things I savored during the day. Rather, it's just innate within me that when I'm out and about, that I notice what's around me, and really making life a sensual experience as much as possible. And I use sensual in the meaning of 5 senses, not necessarily like, ooh.
Yeah, right.
It could be, and that could bring joy, but using this, taste, touch, smell,
Hearing.
hearing, and feel.
Feeling?
Yeah, all five senses. And that's a great thing to do with meals as well. And evoke your senses, because so often we eat kind of unconsciously in front of television, and I do that too. Or eat in the car. I have a chipped front tooth from middle school because I was eating in the car. My mom was driving me to the bus stop, and I started to chew before I got the fork out of my mouth because I was in such a hurry.
Oh, wow.
I've had many dentists try to fix my chipped tooth. It usually works for a little while and then it falls off. And so I have this constant reminder to slow down. And so food can be a wonderful place to focus on mindfulness, slowing down, and creating this sensual experience. And noticing, what are the colors of the food on your plate? What are the textures? How does it sound in your mouth? Pudding is so different from tortilla chips. Not just in the flavor, but in the texture, the way that it sounds, the way that it feels on your tongue. And then also something I recommend too, and we wrote about this in the Mystic Cookbook, is taking that time to think about where your meal is from. Who cooked it? Who grew this food? Where did it grow? If you're having, say, like an Asian stir fry, imagining that rice in the rice fields of China or Vietnam, Thailand, picturing where it was growing. If you're eating vegetables, imagining them growing on the farm. If you're eating meat, even sometimes picturing that animal and really connecting to your food, where it came from. And that will deepen the experience. And it really takes 30 seconds.
I did that. That's so funny you're talking about that. I just did that tonight while we were eating dinner. We were having tuna and tomatoes because it's hot and it's like a cool thing to eat. And I was like, thank you, tuna, for giving us this amazing taste in our mouth. And then I was like, this tomato is made from the earth and the sun and the rain. And I was explaining that to Apple, and she was like,
it's powerful. It really takes 30 seconds and maybe really go into depth 3 minutes. It doesn't take a lot of time out of your life. And, and I don't recommend doing necessarily every meal because that could get tedious, but it really can be a powerful time to savor your meal and express gratitude. There's a reason why in cultures throughout the world, in pretty much every religion, people say grace before a meal. It makes you slow down. It makes you honor the people that are dining with you. It's a time to connect with spirit, and it's a time to recognize the food, the people who prepared it, people who grew it, people who brought it to market, the animals that gave their life for that meal. And, it's done worldwide because it works.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little about what you're doing this weekend. That's what I want to know about.
Oh, I'm very excited. My mom and I are doing a workshop together, and this is really the first time we've ever taught together in this way. So we'll see how it works. But it's called Activate the Writer Within. And it's a writing class, but it's about writing your story, your life story, whether it's a snippet of your life or the entirety of it, as a way of crafting your life. And whether or not you're a writer, you don't have to be a writer to do the workshop. It's important, or it can be valuable, to tell your story. What is your legacy? And it can help you create an even more vibrant present and future by looking at your past and writing your story and creating your legacy, because we each have a finite amount of time left. So how do you want to live those years? What do you want to impart to your children, to your friends, to your family? What is the message you want to share? What do you want to be remembered for? And then we'll also be doing writing exercises and activities. And one of my favorite, which I hope we'll be able to do, is just, matter of time, is one that I also do in my workshop called Unleash Your Creative Genius. That's a photography and writing workshop about kind of unleashing creativity, whereas this one's more specific to writing and telling your story. And where I play different pieces of music. and have participants free write. I don't usually plan the music ahead. I just kind of do shuffle on my iPod, yeah, and see what comes up. And I was a French teacher for children, so sometimes there's French children's music that comes up, and sometimes it's classical or the Beatles or Christmas music. I try to get a wide assortment. And it's really interesting how that kind of free writing with music, when you're not trying to craft something in particular, but simply letting the pen flow. And it's really interesting to see where people go and how their experiences, and what comes to the page is informed by the music they hear. And then I think my mom's going to be doing some guided meditations, past life journeys with people as well, or at least into the far past of your own life. I'm not sure if she'll be going as far back as past lives, but she's going to be doing some really powerful exercises with people as well. So
that whole workshop sounds so powerful. I mean, writing down your life story, because most people don't really even look at the past, are not really aware of what's going on inside of them. So being able to do that in that workshop, writing it all down and really seeing it right there in front of your face and being with it and just loving it, I think is, oh my God, that's so amazing. I love it.
I'm excited about it. As I said, we haven't done this before, so I'm really excited. And then we'll also be sharing some publishing and marketing tips as well, and more publishing than marketing, but and sharing. I've got a great connection with a self-publisher, or company that does self-publishing. So I've got some information for people to share about that as well, so that once you create your tome, your legacy, that if you want to share it with others, there's opportunities for that as well.
Awesome. All right, Meadow, I think we're at the end of the interview. So I just want to, again, thank you for everything that you do, everything that you share with the world to uplift and inspire and bring that creativity into the world, and just loving the world and just being you, being authentic.
Well, thank you so much. It's been such a joy to spend this time talking with you and sharing with the others who may be listening. And I wish you a beautiful evening, full of savoring.
I'm going to remember those tips of savoring the meals and slowing down, because I'm so good at eating really fast. So I'm going to slow down, thanks to Meadow.
Remember my chip.
All right. Take care.
Lots of love. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.